Hobby Quick Hits. A sports card podcast where we tackle the hobby's hottest topics in depth to help you navigate the sports card landscape and enjoy the hobby we all love. Here's your host, John Newman.
All right, before we start the show, let's hear from our great sponsor of the show, Mojo Break. Hey folks, wanted to tell you about the best place to get some of your sealed sports card wax products. Great selection and some of the lowest prices on the web. MojoBreakShop.com is that place. Whether it's a box or a whole case, they're your guys, and they ship around the world right to your door. The Mojo Break name is one of the most trusted in the hobby. From sports cards to Pokemon, their selection can't be beat. They offer daily deals and pre-orders. Who won first place at this year's Topps Rip Party? None other than Mojo Break. Their prices are already great, but here's a way to save even more money. Use the code QUICKHITS, that's QUICKHITS, for 10% off anything on MojoBreakShop.com. They also have a full-service card shop in Santa Clara, California. So if you're in the area, stop by. They're open 7 days a week, so check them out at MojoBreakShop.com. All right, time for another edition of Hobby Quick Hits. So sometimes one of my listeners or someone who follows me on social media will ask a question, and some of those questions wind up being content creation or one of my show's topics and or show episode. Today is one of those days, and the question that has made this episode is, how have shows changed since you've been doing shows as a dealer? And it's a great question, and I want to say I never thought about it, but until I really got this question, I didn't deep dive into it as much as I did to come up with this episode. And so those who follow on social media or listen to either one of the shows are probably well aware that I did my first show at 15 years old in 1987. I was born in 72, and so I got my sales tax number set up at my first show at 15 years old. I made $1,500. In today's standards, that would be a crappy show, truth be told. But in 1987, that was a tremendous show. And when you factor in that it was 15 with no bills and no overhead other than the sales tax that I just had to start paying because I got my sales tax number, that was a lot of money, and I was hooked. And so I really started thinking about the shows that I did in the 80s and 90s and kind of where the shows have changed, what has evolved. And so when I did my first show in 87, I didn't have my store yet. I didn't get my store until age 20, so it would be 5 years after I did my first show that I would have my first brick and mortar. But I remember one of the things that popped up with what's the difference between now and then, which again is a question I get asked, especially from younger people, because they weren't around then like I was, and they're curious, right? What was it like? Was it like today? And the answer, quite frankly, is no. Very simply put, in 1987, what did we not really have at that point yet, right? Cell phones, eBay, modern, a lot of the social medias that we have today. Beckett Magazine, was the Bible. I'm not just saying that. It was the Bible. It's what we looked for those pointed up triangles every week, every month, to see those cards go up so we could get more money. People used Beckett on both sides of the table, right? As a dealer, it was my go-to, and as a consumer, people had it as well. Now, it's not like today, where you go to a show today and both the dealer and the potential buyer have their smartphones out and either using an analytical service or they're on eBay checking comps. Back in the 80s and 90s, right, there wasn't a Beckett necessarily on either side of the table. Now, that's not necessarily true. Well, there was always a Beckett. As far as I'm concerned, I always had, all the 4 sports Beckett's with me in my show box and my, where I kept all my markers and whatnot. And, yeah, sure, some people walking around the show, especially if they were, just a baseball person, they'd have the baseball Beckett in their back pocket. But you didn't really take it out at the table. You might kind of go off to the side, look something up real quick, and then kind of come to the table. And so we didn't have, again, the technology. It was what we would call old school today. You haggle with the price, and sometimes most of the time, you do that without even necessarily referring to the book. My stuff was all priced. I had a price gun, and so I would use that Beckett price guide to sort of, I didn't necessarily, just if it was, $15 in the Beckett, doesn't mean I price it at $15, but just like the name insinuates, right, price guide. It was sort of my guideline, right? Maybe it's $15 in the Beckett, but I paid $2 for it, and I want to sell it for $9, right? It was real easy for me to say, hey, it's worth $15. That's what the Beckett says. I'm only asking $9. It's a good deal, right? Maybe they still haggle. Hey, you take 8, take 7, and then it's on me to, hold my guns and say, no, it's a $15 card. I can't do $7. I'll do $9 or even $8, right? Or say, yeah, I'll take $7. And so those were the one of the big differences is we didn't have the technology. And I'm not even complaining about it. I've said many a time that I'm glad I didn't grow up with just social media only. I'm glad I know the hobby before social media times really became such a huge part of it and impact of it. Another thing about those 80s shows that I did, I made some. I know they were nationwide, but here in New York, where I'm from, Broders. Some people are going to hear the name Broder and like, what? Broder? Martin Brodeur from the New Jersey Devils? No, Broders. Broders were a Fugazi knockoff, non-licensed card, right? I'm not talking Panini baseball. I'm talking out of someone's basement with a printer, right, to make these kind of fake cards. But they were all the rage. And I'm not gonna lie, I bought, as most dealers, you can't fight City Hall. Most dealers had them on their table. I bought them literally in 5,000 count monster boxes of different players sorted and from a guy. I don't know if where he got them from, but he was the guy I got them from. I think I paid like $0.25 a piece, or maybe less, 20 cents. And at bare minimum, they sold for $1 a piece, right? No matter who. I remember selling, this will tell you where we were at back then, selling Kevin Seitzer Brodeurs. Remember Kevin Seitzer, you old guys and ladies out there, right? Kevin Seitzer Brodeurs for $1 a piece, right? Probably paid 10 cents a piece for them. And, they were all the rage. People who collected a certain player. As crazy as it sounds, not only did they have to have all the, Topps Fleer, Donruss, and Score of their guy, they had to get all the Brodeurs made of that particular player. And if they were a really popular player, i.e. Don Manley here in New York, there was 50 different Brodeur Don Manleys. If you were Don Manley super collector, you had to have every Don Manley, right? If you were a real Don Manley collector, and I'm not gonna lie, I sold a lot of Broder cards. That first show I talked about with the 1,500 back then being a lot of money for sure. Today, not so much. Probably be a very bad show at $1,500. But that $1,500, I'd venture a pretty safe guess that probably between $350 to $500, somewhere in that vicinity, might have been all the dollar Broders that I sold. And I didn't feel bad. everyone had them at their table, right? If you didn't have them, you were going to lose a sale potentially to another table. And so it was Broder wars. I wanted to have, a good selection, and I did. And I sold a lot of them. And so, today we don't really have that, we don't have the forget. People don't like, Broders today would not be popular like they were in 1987, 88, and 89. Back then, people couldn't get enough of them. Today, people wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. But I made many a sale on those things and bought those things in bulk, truth be told. I'm a very honest and transparent person. And the other thing from doing the shows in the the mid 80s, if you will, there was a line, like as a dealer, as a sales tax holder, I had, customers were customers. Even though I didn't have a store yet, I believe I was direct with Score and Fleer without a storefront. I could be wrong. I know I had like 2 accounts. And so I was still buying cases to sell to sell boxes and packs at the show, and to, get online with Score and Fleer and Upper Deck Tops and Donruss at the time. You had to show a tax number. Some of them would only sell if you had a storefront. So that's why I didn't have all of them yet. I wound up getting all of them once I got my brick and mortar store. But sticking to the show side of the house is I had those couple of, online with a couple of those companies. I think it was Score and Fleer at the time. And if you were just a regular person, if you will, non-dealer without a sales tax number, you weren't getting that product direct from the company. There was that sort of line there that you could get wax cheaper because you were a sales collecting, law-abiding dealer. Today, we know that's not the case no more. That line is blurred. What a dealer or even sometimes a distributor can get a product for, so can a regular consumer if they shop around, do their pre-sales, and get in at the ground and cheapest level. And so it's not that I can get this and you can't anymore. It's available if the price is right. And, there was that line where if you were a dealer, you could get wax boxes and wax cases. And if you weren't, you would have to buy them from a dealer. There was no middleman. There was no other way. It was that way or no way. And as we know today, anyone can buy wax as long as they have the money. I mean, we can even buy vintage wax as long as you have what's on that price tag, which is going to be probably very expensive. And so that's a huge difference between now and then shows, right? One of the other ones too that come to mind for me is, a lot of my customers, when you do the show circuit in sort of a same area a lot, whether it be a monthly show, a bi-weekly show, you see the same, you get to know people on a first name basis, who they collect, what they're collecting, what set they're putting together, what team they collect, what player they collect. I had a clientele where when I was opening packs, I would put cards aside because I know, Dan wants all Braves cards. Mike collects all Reds, and they're already going to buy these. We have sort of a set upon agreement, 10 cents for no names, if you will, and then stars, we can figure that out when we look at the whole lot. And so, there was, as dealers, we were on one side of the table, and consumers and buyers were on the other. There was no gray area. There really wasn't. And, people, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but, you go to the show today, and people are walking around, right? Kids, adults, with their cases, right? With their cards for sale or trade. Back then, there was a little bit of that, but most people didn't have anything except their checklist, their wallet, and maybe, like I said, that that tri-folded Beckett magazine price guide in their back pocket potentially. And, it was just, there was kind of a line in the sand. And then probably the early 90s when eBay kind of was, early stages. I think that was 94, 95. I could be wrong on my year. And when cards start becoming, that boom again for back then, not the boom we know in today's day and age. Even the booms were different back then. But, what I started to notice, a lot of people who were buying from me were now setting up themselves. They were buying so much. They're like, whether it was a spouse or a loved one that says, hey, you gotta clean some of this up. You gotta sell some of that. Maybe they saw a credit card bill, right? And a lot of the people who were customers of mine became dealer associates of mine. They were set up with me on the dealer side of the house. And it became very prevalent, back then. And now, now we see people, like I said, walking around with, plastic card cases with, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 potentially worth of cards in those things, just making sales. And some of these guys, as we all know, this is not breaking news, that are selling out of their boxes. They're not set up at the show. They're at the show, selling their wares from one table to the next. Some of those guys probably got the right idea, right? Think about it. They could make $50,000, $100,000 in an hour, 2 hours. They're not tied up all day. They don't have to lug stuff in on a cart. They don't have to load up their car with 10 shoe boxes, 6 to 8 showcases, 20 shoe boxes, 10 monster boxes, supplies, price gun, price guides, markers, tape, paper, cash box. Right? They got one now. In today's day and age, they got one case with how many ever cards it holds. They go to the table. Are you buying? Are you interested? Right? Maybe a cash trade deal. And they make their $50,000, $100,000 in an hour or two and get out of the show and have the rest of the day, right? And that show dealer is there 8 to 12 hours. Got to pack everything up. Play Jenga to get it in their vehicle where the doors can close, right? All that stuff. And it's just a different vibe at the show. They're still great. They're still fun. They're still viable. They're still important for socialization. But it's just a way different feeling and a way different level than the shows I remember in the late 80s, early 90s, even 2000s. And if you haven't lived during those times, you really don't know. I mean, obviously, it's different. You just don't know to what level difference it is. And some of these big shows now, I'm not even talking the national, just these other regional shows, if you want to call them mini nationals, again, it's just so much stuff there. If you can't find it there, maybe very, very rare or just hard to find. So it's a different vibe. I still enjoy it. I think you have to be more competitive in today's market because you're competing against more people. Those early shows, it was me and just 30 other dealers in that room, right? That was it. Whoever had the card someone wanted and it was the lowest price was probably going to pull that sale down. And today you're not only competing with your fellow dealers in the building, you're competing with all the dealers around the world with eBay. Somebody can look at a card at a table, try to haggle on price, no agreed price is reached. They literally meet at that table, pull out their phone, and buy a same or very similar card on eBay for less money at the show, right at the table. And, at the Dallas Card Show, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't set up. I went as a consumer, and there was some stuff that I wanted to buy. And when I kind of came around the second time to purchase it, someone had beat me to it. It was sold out. What did I do? I was staying with Brad Bethune. I was at his house, went on eBay, made the purchase of the item I couldn't get at the Dallas show because someone else beat me to it. So it's ultra competitive. Where the old days you were just competing with 30 people in that room along with you. That was it. That was your competition. Now your competition is worldwide. There's people selling cards in Japan, China, Great Britain. And so you're not just competing with the 100 other dealers at the show you're set up at. You're competing with everybody online as well, all around the world. And so the game has changed. If you want to call it the game has changed. It's still, for me, it's still fun. It's still challenging. It's still enjoyable. I may not like every aspect of it, truth be told. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's not a utopia. It's not nothing's wrong. But you can still enjoy the hobby no matter how different it is. You just adapt and adjust and still enjoy the hobby however you like to. So we'll bring this episode to a close. We appreciate you listening in, and we'll see you next time on Hobby Quick Hits. Hey folks, thanks for listening to the show. Wanted to give out our social media links where you can follow the show even when you're not listening to it. On Twitter, we are at Hits Hobby, HITSHOBBY. On Instagram, we are at Hobby Quick Hits Podcast, at Hobby Quick Hits Podcast, all one word. Our website is www.sportscardnation.net. Look for the link to Hobby Quick Hits. You'll find us there. And you can always text us on our text line, area code 315-491-0239.
Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.